everyone, and welcome to Previously in the Multiverse. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Connor.
Yep, still here. Somehow.
So much enthusiasm every time he says hello. It's so inviting.
Yeah, well, tell you what. Let me have another 3 drinks, and then I'll show you some enthusiasm.
This is a DC Comics podcast. This is our sister show to Comics from the Multiverse, where we talk about new DC Comics with Matt as well, of course. But this is where we look through classic runs. And what we're going to talk about today on the show, we'll be rounding out the final part of Batman Year 1 in our post-crisis Batman slot with Batman 407. We'll be continuing our New 52 Azzarello Wonder Woman run with issue 12. We'll be doing some more Mark Waid Flash with the Flash issue 69, the second part of Guerrilla Warfare crossover with the Green Lantern. We'll be looking at Birds of Prey issue 3 from the original Chuck Dixon run. We got GSA number 11 from the Geoff Johns run. We have a new book this week, which is exciting, replacing Superman Emperor Joker, thankfully. We have Shazam, The New Beginning issue 1, which was voted for. In fact, we have a winner as well. I'll tell you that in a second for what's replacing that afterwards. And then finally this week we are continuing Stephanie Brown's Batgirl run. Not that she's the writer, but it's easy to refer to it as the Stephanie Brown run, because
yes, you could refer to it as the Bryan Q. Miller Batgirl run if you so wished.
And sometimes I do, but it's easy to say because there's the big cast series and then there's the Steph series.
And the problem is there's just the one Steph, so it's just like it's the Steph Batgirl.
Yes, whereas Bab has a couple of runs now as Batgirl, so you have to specify a bit more. But that's what's coming up on the show. Yeah, I mentioned there's a new winner to replace the Shazam New Beginning book. So when we're finished that, because there's only 4 issues, so we'll be done in 4 episodes time. When we're done with that, we'll be moving on to the next vote winner, which was voted for by our patrons at the $5 and up tier, and that is sorry, I almost said Superman something there. I've got Emperor Joker still in my brain. It's just not left my mind yet. No, we're going to be doing Justice League Power Rangers. Of all things, it was so funny. See, if you go look at the options, it was like Kingdom Come, Dark Knight Returns, and I think New Frontier. It was like 3 of the biggest DC stories of all time.
And our patrons went for Justice League Power Rangers.
Yeah, it's written by Tom Taylor
And art by Stephen Byrne.
Yeah, there you go. See?
I mean, I think we did the first issue on the main show when that dropped.
I think we did. Yeah, we did the first issue.
I actually read the rest of it. I have all the issues. It's a wonderful book, and I can't wait to revisit it. Looking forward to it in about a month's time.
Yep. So that'll be there. Obviously, there'll be something to replace that afterwards. We'll probably do the vote for that in like another month or so's time. Not this month. We got 4 of this, then we got 6 of that. So we can take a month off from voting and then get that voted for then. So yes. So yeah, let's go. Previously in the Multiverse, working through these classic runs. So we'll get started. Batman 407 is the final part of Batman Year 1, written by Frank Miller, of course, and art by Dave Mazzucchelli. And surprise, it's very good. I mean, there was no...
The only critique I have is followed on from the past issue and maybe 2 issues critique. It's, oh, look, the Catwoman stuff feels tacked on. Yeah,
a little bit. You know what's funny about it is that it almost works a little bit better because I know what that leads to in Long Halloween and stuff, like, because they build upon like her going after Falcone a lot and the stuff that comes after, so it makes it better as an overall mythology, but as a story on its own.
But if you're just reading this story, you could cut entirely all of Selina's stuff, and you would lose nothing in regards to this story.
Yes, this is very true. And I'm just making sure I can see we're recording. I was worried that I couldn't there because I had something overlapping it. We are recording for the record. We're good, but it was a concern.
Better be.
So, yeah, we start with Gordon and Essen essentially splitting up because it's the right thing to do, right? Because they know it's wrong, because he knows it's wrong. Although, much to my surprise, he's given her a bracelet because she tries to give this bracelet back, and I'm like, wait, you give her a bracelet? That's got more serious in the time between issues. This is, this makes it feel even skeevier. It makes it feel even worse. Yeah. And it introduces this idea with the news telecast at the bottom of this man Skeevers, who's been arrested by Gordon and is a pretty big deal and could implicate Flass and the commissioner and all these people. He's a big player in the ring, but he gets let go. Harvey didn't let him go, and it's kind of cleared very quickly why. He's intentionally let him go so Batman could spy on him and coerce him and make him scared enough to actually talk and actually spill the beans on everyone.
It's smart.
Yeah.
If a little vicious.
A little bit on the vicious side. Yeah, because he says some really like scary things to him. He's like, I will maim you. I will. What was it he says to him? I know pain. You can never escape me. Blah, blah. Yeah,
it's you can never escape me, but I know pain. Sometimes I share it with someone like you. This is dark.
Yeah, it's super dark stuff. So he's willing to testify, and that's kind of a big thing in this issue because so much of this story from the start is from Gordon's side of things has been trying to work within this corrupt system, work within these corrupt people, and he came to a head with Flash in the very first issue. He's been kind of butting heads with them the whole time, and it all kind of boils down to this final issue where the ultimate kind of like escalation of this happens, where they go after his newborn, because obviously during the course of this issue, like Barbara has her baby.
And I think we should mention the ongoing relationship with Essen. Because as much as they break up on that very first page.
They're back together. Yeah, they're back together again.
The second page, I love that. The first page is dated September 2nd. The full page is dedicated to their breakup, and then the very next page is September 7th, only 5 days later, and it's them making out in the office.
Yeah, no, it's just it's good stuff. So that's kind of sets up the main thing, and basically, Loeb has photographs of him kissing Essen, and it's like, hey, you've got secrets too, and it would be a shame if your wife found out about this kind of thing. And he's all smug. And one of the best things about the art here is just how smug Loeb looks as he sits back in his chair after making this case. So Gordon finally goes to get and talk to Bruce, because he's been trying to talk to Bruce Wayne, suspecting that he could be the Batman, and he takes Barbara with him, bizarrely, because he doesn't want her thinking that he's somewhere late, suspiciously or anything like that. He wants her to know exactly where he is.
I think it's also worth mentioning she's overdue for the baby at this point as well.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want her alone worrying about that. It's more just no. If anything happens, I can take you to the hospital immediately.
And Bruce does the playboy thing. He plays the character.
He's got the model there. He's drinking the champagne at 11 a.m. or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's chuckling away. He's not taking anything seriously. Barbara thinks he's a peg. It's all good stuff. And Alfred even points out, like after they leave, like, it was a good performance. You're a proper vaudevillain and all the rest of it. Even cracks a little joke about Superman. And it's all these stuff. So then we see that the interrogation goes through and they're talking to Flash, and Flash outright basically threatens to have Skeevers killed before he can testify, and the lawyer's kind of yelling about it. But there's this great moment before this when they're driving away, where Gordon's talking about secrets and how Bruce probably has some secrets, and he just stops the car and turns and says, "Honey, there's something we have to talk about." And then I love that we see him go through with the interrogation, and he's still going after Flash. It just rather because there is a beat like the page after when we get to October 5th. There's a beat where you see Barbara pick up the phone and she's like, "Yes, I know about the relationship. Don't call again." There's he's taking away the ammunition. But I think what I like about it is that it's as much as he's preemptively stopped that being having an effect on his work, stopped that having an effect on this prosecution. That's not why he did it. At least not centrally.
It was the push that kind of made him come clean in the end.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we open this book with him trying to break it off with Essen. He's like, no, we have to stop, and he's a little bit weak, and ultimately he goes bad to her, and it tells us how she's transferring out of Gotham to give them space, essentially.
Yeah.
And this is just this blackmail is the final push, where he's like, I can't let that affect the job now, so I'm going to just come clean.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon's a man of principle. He's a man of honor, and he's always known what he's been doing is wrong. He's always felt that it's this giving into something. It's almost like this is also. I mean, I went into a last issue about how Essen might be this idea of flirtation, going beyond what's acceptable in one facet of his life. It's just kind of the precursor to him accepting Batman in a weird way. But I think here you could also say that this was Gotham getting to him in a weird way. This is the one thing he kind of let slip, and the one thing he kind of let take him over.
Yeah, I think temptation. It still really works in the context of her being the precursor to Batman, and this rejection of it here is not a rejection because he doesn't want it or anything like that. It's just that no, he needs to be the honest cop, and for this to work, and ultimately that's what it's going to be. With Batman, even that relationship, he still needs to be the honest cop at the end of the day for the prosecutions to go through, and he needs to have that position of authority and clarity for the law. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Yeah. That said, though, I don't think it's purely like a tactics thing like that. I think it's more about how he feels about it rather than just because he thinks about it in far in advance. Goes, oh, this would mean I can't do this and that.
No, I just mean thematically, as we're reading it, the thematic link between him having to give up Essen and him being this honest cop to kind of giving up Batman in the sense of he's not going to just go down the same path and do his own thing within the police system. He's going to be the honest cop.
I think that's what I'm getting at, though, is I think you keep using the phrase honest cop, but I think the point is here is that he's going to be an honest cop in a lot of the ways you just said, but the idea being that the cop side of him is the side that he's willing to actually alter and sort of do something different in. It's the idea of being an honest husband that he needs to be. He can't not be the honest husband.
That's fair.
And that's ultimately what he makes that choice. He makes the choice where, okay, if there's going to be one side that compromises, it can't be that side of him. And he makes that choice. So, and then we have some of the Catwoman stuff where she's been stealing stuff from the rich people and is pissed that Batman's maybe getting the credit for it on TV.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lead in here where they mention on the news that there's the unheard of plastics. So Wayne Chemicals, they're making these plastics that are lightweight and durable, and then
can't imagine that going anywhere bad.
Yeah, and of course that leads to, you see him with the glider, the big bat wing thing, and him sort of dancing around. But he ends up crossing paths with Catwoman at Falcone's place. Falcone wants his nephew to do some dirty deeds, and Batman's listening in, and Catwoman ends up sort of ruining the whole thing by getting involved. And this even just leads to more confusion as the press think that Catwoman's working in cahoots with Batman. They even call her Batman's assistant, which she's very upset about. Might we add?
Understandably so.
Yeah. So, no, really good stuff for the most part. But again, yeah, you probably could sort of take a lot of this out. But this is obviously where the idea is born from. The idea that they're not going to get away with this, with Gordon. So the idea to go after his child to stop this from happening. So Loeb calls Gordon, gets him out of the house so that Barbara's left alone with the baby. But he kind of understands, he's smart enough to realize, wait a minute, this is so weird. Why am I being called out for this really routine, break-in? And he sees this guy in the bike go past, which actually turns out to be Bruce. It's not actually the bad guys, but it's kind of...
But it triggers it for him.
Yeah, but there is something to be said that Bruce is already on his way to sort of help with this. He's already figured out as well. He's heard what was said in the hospital room.
It boils down to how Bruce is always ahead of Gordon, really, at the end of the day, isn't he?
But so Gordon doubles back, and they've already got the baby. And there's a great moment where after the firefight, where the mysterious man who is in shadow, and Barbara's got the gun on him, and he's like, "I won't let your boy die." So it's this. Race to the finish. We end up on the bridge, and Gordon's struggling with the nephew who's holding the baby at the edge of the bridge, and the baby, of course, falls over, and that's when Bruce just gets there in time and dives off, and we get the gorgeous silhouette shot of him catching the baby as everyone's falling.
Yeah,
everyone's falling.
Whereas it's not like a huge fall, so the others are like, it's fine, we can swim.
Yeah,
but it's it's a baby.
Yeah, and. Bruce hands the baby back, and he's not in costume or anything. He's just, because it's daytime. That's something that was mentioned earlier on.
He made a big point where Alfred's like, "Shall I get the costume?" He's like, "No, never in daylight." Which it's kind of funny now because I mean, I say that, but Dark Knight Rises, when he comes out in daytime at the end of that movie, is a huge deal. Even as comics readers, it's so rare to see, right?
Yeah, well, even those movies make a point of saying he never does it in daytime. Dark Knight makes that point multiple times, so it's notable that he does it in Dark Knight Rises. It's a big deal thematically.
Absolutely. It makes that point in its own trilogy, don't get me wrong, but I mean, even as seasoned comic fans who've read a lot, it's so rare to see him in the costume in daylight, but before that.
Yeah, so... And it makes a point, Gordon's glasses get knocked over and he's practically blind without them, so he can't see the face. And he makes it clear that, whoever he's talking to, this Batman, whoever it is, he's making it clear that I can't tell who you are. I don't know who you are right now.
I don't want to see you right now.
Yeah.
It's fine. Just go.
And we get the final page wrap up of them saying, "Oh, they're prosecuting Flash and yada yada yada." Loeb's not going down, but he's getting his resignation sort of lined up with the mayor and so on, and it ends with that sort of famous moment. And do you know what's funny is I always remembered in my memory there'd been a bat signal here for this last page, and there isn't.
I see why you can think that. It's the shot is so laid out with it like designed to be in the background almost, like it's going to be there in the future.
Yeah, there's actually empty space in the panel. The rooftop shot of Gordon standing, and there's space for the bat signal. But it's basically I'm saying, yeah, well, there's something happening. Someone's threatened to poison the Gotham Reservoir, calls himself the Joker, but I've got a friend showing up who may be able to help. It's just him waiting for the Batman to show up, and it's very. If you compare it to the movies, it's obviously easy to see how the end of Batman Begins took kind of a similar idea here.
It built on it, but the core the core beat of that moment is this moment here.
Yeah. So no, it's kind of the perfect ending because the story of this book more than anything else is getting Gordon and Batman to a point where they're willing to work with each other.
Yeah, I think there's an argument that this is almost more of a Gordon story than it is a Batman story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true to a point, but I don't like putting it that way, mainly because I think the whole point of focusing more on Gordon is that you have to focus on the more real character to really sell the idea of this more fantastical element. The guy who dresses up in the bat suit and does all these things. Gordon does get more panel time. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it's all about the idea of the Batman and the city accepting him and Gordon accepting him. The Batman is the core facet that makes the whole thing kind of tick. And Gordon is this wonderful character to view it through because he's the character who feels the need for someone like Batman. He's the character who sees the corruption. He's the character who wants to do something about it but can't. He's the character who has to try and deal with that corruption like hands-on and fails. There's a lot of reasons why Gordon's the perfect lens to view this story through, and that's probably why it was picked. It's probably why Miller had the idea in the first place, was to do it from this perspective.
Yes, because he was a damn fine writer.
Once upon a time.
Yes, that's why I very explicitly said was.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't have as much to say because I think the first 3 issues I had a lot of analytical sort of things to say about the way it flowed, panel to panel, page to page. I think this issue, if I have a complaint, is that it's maybe almost a little bit too jam-packed in terms of how much stuff it's got in there, and maybe removing the Catwoman stuff would be what lets it breathe a little bit.
I think so. I think for me as well, it's a lighter conversation because it's the final issue. There's nothing new that it's bringing to the table in terms of themes or anything like that. It's just closing off those beats that it played up in the first 3 issues. Everything it introduced, it's paying off here. So we've kind of already spoken about all those beats, those thematic ideas over the past 3 issues. So here it is just closing them off, following through on them. They're all here, and they're all delivered on in a pretty satisfying way. It's still a really great issue. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much it. Obviously, the art's really good again. It's been very consistent throughout. A lot of atmosphere in it, if nothing else. And it is worth mentioning, I think, as well, that we end essentially. There's been so much nighttime and so much grittiness throughout the story that I think it is notable. The final showdown, that sort of the moment where Gordon kind of reconsiders how he feels about Batman, happens in daylight. I think that's a really interesting choice.
It's very much Batman stepping out into the light and showing that no, he's willing to take these steps no matter the time of day, right? He'll do what he has to do. And he'll be there regardless. It is smart to do it that way, I think.
Yeah. So no, there you go. What are you giving Batman 407?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I am knocking off maybe half a point for the Catwoman stuff, feeling ancillary there. But other than that, it's pretty great.
No, I agree. 8.5. I think it's interesting that the first 2 parts of this 4-part story are basically masterpieces of issues.
I think we gave them 9s or 9.5s maybe.
Yeah, I might have even given one of them a 10, to be honest, if I remember right.
Well done.
And these the 3rd and 4th parts are still very, 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 very good, very, very great even. but it is notable that just if you look at the curve, if you will, there are, the last half is slightly lower than the first half, and I wonder if that is because it doesn't introduce necessarily a new element kind of in the back half to sort of kind of respice it up a little bit again.
Arguably the element it does focus on, which is the newer element, is Catwoman, which ultimately feels like it doesn't go anywhere. It's not as satisfying as the other beats that it introduced in the first two.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, but no, obviously, I mean, that's a minor critique because obviously, if you take it as a whole, if you read it in one sitting as a 4-part story, it's one of the most exceptional Bat books there is. It's been used to sort of reframe how we think of the character, and has done since it came out in the mid to late 80s, and here we are.
Yeah, and that is how most people experience this story now. In terms of right now, we're in the minority of people reading this issue by issue. Obviously, as it came out, that was the only way. But since then, it's 90% of people, if not more, read this just as one book, including us in the past, I'm sure. So it's it definitely, I'd say it maybe reads a little bit better just reading it all at once, because it just the flaws aren't as obviously highlighted in the back half.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So there you go. Wonder Woman issue 12, Bryan Azzarello writing with I've got the wrong artist down here.
It's Cliff Chiang.
It's Cliff Chiang, yes. I still had whoever did like 2 issues ago written down. So Tony Aitkins or whatever his name is. So yes, issue 12 here. So that's the second trade done. If we're going by trades here, this is the end of the second trade.
Was the 0 issue in the third trade then?
Yes, because I read the trade, so yes was the last issue.
Okay, fair enough.
So it must be, if it's in any of them, even.
Yeah, and the only reason I know the 0 issue's next is because it's after every issue 12 of this period of the New 52.
That is true. I hated those theme months because it was like everything just stopped for whatever gimmick they had. Oh, it was so annoying. Anyway, yes. So Wonder Woman issue 12. We left off last time with the big cliffhanger. Wonder Woman's in heaven. There to fight Olympus, thank you. There to fight Apollo and everyone else.
Artemis mainly,
yeah, sure. But like Apollo's the one taking the throne and all the rest of it. So this issue's a big action issue yet again, which is funny because typically what I've said in the last 4 or 5 issues is that I'm not in love with this run. I've made that very clear. Probably from about issue 3 or 4, it's kind of dipped for me, and I'm just not super into it. But the one thing that's been really good at is the action, and when it tends to focus on that, I tend to enjoy the issue more. Now, I'm not going to, and this is not leading up to me saying the action this is bad. I'm not saying that at all.
Have you got a little bit numb to it?
Yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's just the fact that I feel like the action in this, it felt so seeped into so many characters talking to each other about what was going on that the action, instead of being like a really simple premise where, okay, you've got these characters in a fight in this location, they're doing cool things, the fight's really intense. Instead of that, there was a lot of dialogue in between because they're constantly doing their all of they're talking about who's living, who's dying, who's becoming God, who's getting the throne, who's whatever.
Who's becoming God?
Who's talking, who's taking Zola, blah, blah, blah. I have to admit, I found this issue kind of... I don't want to say it was a short read because it's still a fairly quick read because... the art and the writing.
There are multiple pages where there are like 1 or 2 word word boxes, and that's it, and it's just action. But so it definitely doesn't read as slow as some other things you could be choosing. Yeah.
However, this issue, despite the fact that it was a lot of action, it was still simultaneously everything I don't really like about the run that much.
I get that. I think personally I found it quite an exhilarating issue because I was into it. This is very much the conclusion to... I mean, the second trade, sure, but it's more if anything, the first arc, I would say, really.
Mm.
This feels like the payoff to the stuff that we've been building since issue 1 with rescuing Zola. And for me, who's been into that stuff, this was really up there in terms of the issues that we've had of this book for me. It felt like it really tied together a lot of elements. We had various gods and stuff that had been woven throughout various issues really coming together at the forefront here, and their relationships being utilized in a way that was set up really nicely throughout the previous 11 issues for me. And it's just accented by the fantastic art that makes some of the particular beats, Diana's beats, main beat in particular, with the gauntlets, is one of my favorite moments of this book so far, I think.
Where she takes them off to because she's going to fight Artemis, and she's like, these belong to you. So the idea being that they're actually a weakness if she's fighting Artemis. Yeah,
the idea that Artemis, they're your best defense, and she's like, no, they were more restraints, cuffs, I think is the word she uses. And she's just unfiltered from that point. And the next page is a phenomenal page of her beating the shit out of Artemis, with this gorgeously red background throughout it all.
Yeah, I have to admit, I love that page.
Really? I think that's one of the best pages so far.
It's not as poorly drawn by any means. It's just, compared to some of the fights that have been in this issue, I don't feel the fight here. Like, I feel like this should have been more of a difficult fight to win it, but it feels like she just comes in and like dominates her, and it's like nothing. I don't know. Like, it didn't sell me on how difficult it would be to fight her, so I didn't really feel the actual triumph of doing so, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. The only word I can use to describe reading that page for me would be exhilarating, I would say. The flow and the pacing of the fight, the way it builds, for me is excellent. And like I say, and then you have Apollo cut them off at the end, just as she's won, she's got defeated, and I feel that interruption in the pacing, in a very intentional way.
Okay. I don't have anything.
No?
I mean, it all builds up. Zola's water's broken. Diana makes a deal with Apollo for him not to come after the baby, and he basically agrees to this. However, if this baby does end up being the one that the prophecy's about, who'll slay the god to take the throne, then like Diana herself will have to kill it. We actually get to see if she agrees to that, but given that she comes back and she's not getting chased.
The assumption is that she did.
Yes.
Right?
I would agree with that. But Zola's in giving birth, the others are outside, and then the twist here at the end of this issue, the end of the arc as you put it, after 12 issues, is that Hermes pulls a heel turn and steals the baby. He's delivering the baby for a start, and then he just disappears with it. And
yeah, I mean, it makes me go, well, he is the god of thieves, so not that surprising, really.
Yeah, and we see him take it to
Demeter.
Demeter, yes, I was looking for it there. The weird poison ivy knockoff, and then as a final page tease,
goddess of the harvest that was introduced last issue.
No, I remember. Yes.
Yeah. Just giving her the respect that she deserved. That it's not just poison ivy knockoff.
And I remembered her being the poison ivy knockoff, which is why I'm calling her that again. The final page teases. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this teasing Orion?
It is, yes. We're doing New God stuff for the next part of the book, which
interesting.
I remember being very exciting.
Now, can I just say, I complained last issue that once again, Zola getting kidnapped, right? This issue ended with, the baby got kidnapped. Can we do can we go 2 issues without either Zola or a baby getting kidnapped, please?
Sure, I get that appeal. That you might want that.
I'm just sick of it.
No, I get it. I think this one works for me in that it's a very different kidnapping. It is ultimately boils down to someone got kidnapped. But I think it's the shock of the thing they've been trying to protect the whole time got kidnapped by someone they thought was an ally. That kind of makes it land for me. I
mean, I get the heel turn aspect of it. It's just, I feel like we've done this a bunch of times now. So much of this book up until now has been trying to retrieve someone from a god of some kind or a whatever. It's been that over and over again.
Yeah, no arguing with that. I'm not really going to defend it. Not really. I think it's a very valid criticism to have.
I want someone to go back and actually count how many times someone's been kidnapped, and because Wonder Woman even herself was technically kidnapped by Hades.
Hades, yeah.
So
no, it's fair because I've made this complaint in other things. There's a season of Doctor Who where every single episode ends with the cliffhanger of they're about to die, and I got so annoyed, like, because it's fine, you know, like I know that they're not really gonna die, and it's fine. You can pull that cliffhanger every so often with me knowing that, and it's still okay to do, right? Mm-hmm. But when it was every episode for like 6 in a row, I got angry. Like, I got angry when it ended on that again. So I get the feeling, I really do.
This has to be at least the 4th kidnapping in 12 issues.
We've had at least Zola twice, the baby, and Wonder Woman once.
Yeah, so that has to be at least the 4th.
At least 4th, yeah.
4 out of 12 is
pretty high. Yeah,
that's a pretty high occurrence. So I will be making this a thing when we read more issues of this. If there's any more kidnappings,
kidnap counter.
There's going to be a kidnap counter. I want somebody to go back and just confirm that that's the only 4. If there was more, then I want to know.
I mean, I don't explicitly remember anymore, but I can't say for sure that there wasn't.
This is like when you're watching the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and you have to keep track of how many times Giles gets knocked out over the course of the show, because it's a lot.
Oh God, if that was a drinking game.
There's a Giles knockout counter. The man gets knocked out a lot in that show. Anyway, what are you giving Wonder Woman issue 12?
I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think it's a fantastic ending to the arc. It teases the New God stuff really nicely. That final panel in particular with the boom of the boom tube is gorgeous. So yeah, I'm into it.
Cool. I hope I like it more than this past bunch of stuff. Maybe if we're getting to New God stuff, I might like it more. So for me, this was like a, I don't know, 5.5 maybe.
Fair enough.
Something like
I think we've got the Zero issue. I think that is unrelated to the New God stuff. Although I could be wrong. I don't remember it.
I'll be honest. I forgot we'd have to do a Zero issue. I forgot that was going to be a thing.
What was the one after Zero? Was it Villains next?
I think it was Villains, yeah. And then it was like the Future one after that, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Future's
and I don't know, because obviously the Zero issues were very much, every book Zero issue was pretty relevant, right? You know, it was always the same team, same writer, you know, so it was okay. You kind of had to read it. It was always included in the trades.
So, some of the books had like 4 Villains issues, and some of them were completely irrelevant to.
Yeah, some books had like 2 villain issues, but neither of them were written by the main team and were actually relevant to the book. So I don't remember, in regards to Wonder Woman, if any of them were relevant. I feel like it had 1 relevant issue, but it'll be a complete surprise to me as to which villain it was at the time, because I don't remember at all.
Yeah. All right. The Flash issue 69. Mark Waid writing with plot assist by, as this book credited him as Jerry Jones, for whatever reason. But Greg Laroque's on the art, so this is definitely the Flash issue because the artist obviously tells us that. If you were at all confused,
as if the cover didn't.
You know what I mean? No, like they've kept the same, you know, the regular artist on it. And you know, this starts kind of as we expected with the same sort of event happening with them moving into the castle. But from Wally's perspective, and we get to hear what he was up to, and it reestablishes some of the same details. But he gets a call from Linda where he agreed to be on a TV show, on her talk show, that morning, as Connor's getting more booze.
Did you say more booze? Like I've had a lot. You don't know how much I've had.
I don't need to.
Screw you.
So he's going to race around the planet because it's 2 minutes, but obviously he's not even fast enough to get to the other side of the planet in that time. So he uses their teleporter after he assembles it.
He has to assemble it very quickly, yeah.
And he decides, you know what, I've got time now. I'm going to make some food and check my my phone messages or something, whatever he's doing.
He gets very annoyed that the microwave even takes too long.
Yes. Well, given that he only has 2 minutes from the phone call to when he's supposed to be on camera, and this all happens in that 2 minutes, but this explains why he didn't stay back and answer the phone. So it retroactively made this less of a dick move because he was running late for something for Linda.
Yeah, that felt like a particularly breezy move last time.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas here it's like, yeah, it's okay, I get it, it's fine.
That's what you've got a machine there for.
But he does, as he's running on the way to the TV studio, he encounters Hector Hammond, who is causing chaos with a bus. People are falling out of the bus and everything.
And Hammond's like, oh, yes, perfect.
Yeah, basically this was a trap for the Flash, because I'll describe, because there's a bit of fighting here where there's a lot of bricks involved and Wally's running
Flash,
around.
Wally doesn't quite know who he is. He's like, you're that guy, Hiram. He's like, Hector.
Yes, he's very offended. But what this boils down to, how to describe this? Hector Hammond wants transportation to Africa to go to Gorilla City, so he essentially, with his powers, uses Wally as a horse and cart, where he's like the cart and Wally's
is a rickshaw, I believe, is exactly the word that Wally uses.
Oh, is that what Wally uses? But he's literally running across the Atlantic Ocean, and there's like a psychic energy holding Hector.
Here's the thing, correct me if I'm wrong. Hector Hammond has a floating chair.
He does. Maybe the chair can only go so fast, though. Maybe this is much faster than the chair. Chair's top speed.
Yeah, but how long was he having to go, maybe I'll just see if Flash shows up.
Yeah, but
a few buses.
Yeah, but what if it's like an electric wheelchair where the top speed's like 5 miles an hour?
Get on a plane.
But then he has to wait in line. He has to go through security. There's a whole. He has to buy a ticket. He has to pay for it for a start. He's a villain. He's not like paying for things.
It was the 90s. Security was quicker to get through.
Oh dear. So that's how he ends up in Africa. He does explain a little bit of backstory for Hector Hammond. For anyone who doesn't know, just kind of roughly who he is. That Green Lantern fought him. Yada yada yada.
I felt this issue was actually more expositionary than the Green Lantern one that we had.
I think that's because in this one, Hector basically explains who he is as just to Wally in dialogue, whereas with Grodd last issue, it was more about kind of Grodd doing his plan and then seeing the reaction of various characters to it. So it kind of got it through in a smarter way. But I wonder if that's just a simple case of like the roles they both play in the plot, as opposed to like the skill of the writers like failing them, kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, far be it from me to say that Waid is a worse writer than Jones. That would be a very damning statement.
Yeah, I mean, Waid's a fantastic writer. We know this.
No, exactly. However,
yes.
That said, I think I might enjoy this issue less than the previous one.
I think that's fair. Do you think you'd have felt differently if you'd read this one first?
No. At the end of the day, I think the other one has more going on that feels interesting. Like, you've got the Bureau of the animals. It feels like it's bouncing around a bit more. It's got a bit more movement. Whether you necessarily like all of that stuff or not is a different question, but it feels like there's more going on. And then you get to the Grodd stuff at the end. Whereas this here, really, I felt like we spent a good 10 pages in the middle just, we'll do a 3-page fight with Hammond, and then we'll have him explain what's going on for about 4 pages. I felt that drag.
This one feels like it's got less to do. So I think this is almost just a short straw of, like, what... Because this is less about Wally, less about Flash, and more about what Hector Hammond's role is in the plot.
Yes.
And I think that's what lets this one suffer more than the Grodd one, because Grodd's actually doing a lot more things.
Yeah, I agree. Which is why I ultimately don't think it would matter which way around I've read these. I think I would still prefer the Green Lantern issue. Yeah.
Basically, Wally tricks him when they get to the jungle. He goes so fast that Hector is uncomfortable, shall we say. So he eventually yells him to stop. Basically, the idea it's kind of like just like the brakes in a car if you're going really fast, so someone will go through the windshield. It's essentially the same thing as that, where Hector goes flying because he's tricked him into making him stop. So that's Wally running through the jungle. He runs into Green Lantern, which is how we ended the first issue as well. So this is where we end. So Green Lantern is next, and then Flash issue 70 comes later. So next episode we will be talking about Green Lantern
issue 31.
Sorry, yeah. Because it says read the other side of this in issue 30 first.
Yes.
Which is where I read
because obviously originally I believe these two came out on the same day, so it was, even though it is labelled as such, maybe you weren't a regular Green Lantern reader and you just went to your shop and picked up this issue, got to the end and went, shit, back to the shop. Yeah,
it does maybe feel like you could potentially just read one of them, but it does. I do get the impression that you have to read both of the next two, because it's definitely. I feel like it's going to be more linear now.
I agree. I think these two definitely feel like, I mean, if you miss one, it's no big deal, but it definitely seems, we'll judge accordingly, but it seems like the next two are very much parts 3 and 4 appropriately, whereas this, I mean, either one of these could have been 1 or 2.
It's kind of smart actually when you think about it. It's basically getting you into the crossover either way. So even if you don't go back and read the other issue, if you're invested in the story and want all say like the rest of the story, you have to then know you're getting the other one for the next time.
Yeah, if you don't want to go back to your shop at the time, obviously, and pick up, in this case, you don't want to go back to the shop and pick up Green Lantern 30. You'd be like, okay, fine, I'll read Flash, I'll just get Green Lantern 31 next time and go from there.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would probably work fine.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. Well, it was an okay issue, though, as much as it wasn't maybe as good. I mean, I did like the voice for the characters better in this issue, even if the actual events of this issue were less exciting.
That's fair.
Yeah, so that's not bad. I mean, I think this crossover isn't going to be anything special. It kind of feels like it's just going to be a fun little romp.
It feels forgettable
between the two characters. I think it's interesting that starting Waid's run, we had the year one story, which feels like a really prominent part of the run that's important. I don't think, and we enjoyed, relatively speaking, the Abracadabra, like 2-3 part or whatever that was. But
yeah.
It doesn't feel like we've gotten to the next big part of the run yet, which is fine. Not every arc can be the big,
No, it feels like we came out really strong with the year one stuff, and then it's like, and here's just some stuff to tide you over until the next big thing, right? Is kind of the feeling I'm getting right now.
Yeah. So, but hey, it was not bad though. What are you going to give this issue?
I'm going to give it a 6.5. I'm docking a little bit just for over exposition.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give it the 7. It's kind of it's good. It's not great. Like you say, it feels a little bit like we'll have the fight with Hammond. I did love the visual of him sort of riding on while he's back across the Atlantic Ocean, though. I have to admit that there's something just simply
kind of fun,
beautiful about that I can get into. But that is the Flash 69. Birds of Prey issue 3. Chuck Dixon writing with Greg Land on the art, as we've had the last couple issues. This is the conclusion to this first 3-part story. Sorry, 3-arc story. But 3-part story.
I mean, we might get one later.
We might indeed. So I quite enjoyed this issue. I think I've liked this first arc. Now that we've had all 3 parts of it, I kind of like how distinct each issue's felt in it. Where the first one was about to sort of try to sneak in and find out what's happening. Then you introduce Bard at the end of the issue. And then issue 2 is them trying to escape and all this stuff. And then this issue, I really like the conceit of, in the camp, you've got Canary and Bard trying to escape, and the idea that he's blind, so she's kind of leading the blind man through the jungle and the dodging alligators and all the rest of it. But I love the aspect, and it's kind of what makes Birds of Prey work so well, even this early on, is the idea of having the person back, at the computer in the chair who's trying to help, but she can't find her. I loved her and Tim, Babs and Tim sitting with the maps, trying to figure out, okay, where could they be? Like, what, there's this much jungle in real Asia, the made up country.
Yes.
And we're trying to find out where that. Every time, I felt the pacing was really good because of that, the way it was bouncing back and forth between them. It's kind of the same thing that makes something like Die Hard or even Under Siege work really well, is where you cut to the people who are on the outside of the situation trying to help from the other side.
It just gives it this breather, so that when you cut back to the action, in this case Canary, it feels fresh again, even though it's just the very next part of that scene.
Yeah, and it does a smart little thing here as well, because remember, we teased Blockbuster at the end of the last one shot before we started the series, and this actually kind of teases more of that stuff in this issue. And it's a really fun little jokey way as well, where like, we have to like pay the ransom that's been demanded for Canary, and it's like, he wants $2 million or whatever it is, and Tim's like, wait, you have that money? And she says, I know someone who does though. And I actually thought, she's going to take it from Bruce because Bruce can afford it. And then
I did too, but no, just take it from a criminal, much easier.
Yeah, she's basically just stolen it from Blockbuster, who's like throwing computers around, and his tech, he's like, well, I tried to stop this Oracle, but my tech just couldn't keep up. My hardware just couldn't do it. I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. She does get a message from her pen pal, but she doesn't answer it because she's too busy trying to help Dinah.
I'm sure that's coming up soon.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to more of that, but at least so far that's where we are with it. And we do the whole thing with Hellhound where he wants to fight Canary. He's sick of chasing people who can't fight back, so he wants the showdown. Do you know, this really would make a good action movie, just on the premise alone of what it is. Like, the idea that he like finds her after they've already gotten away from everyone else, and it's like, no, this is the end of the line. We're going to have her one-on-one fight now.
Yeah, and the way he talks about it with Pajamas being like, no, I'm going to let her go. I'm going to give her a head start. Let her think she has a chance. He wants that thrill of the hunt and the chase. It's not just for him. This isn't just a job about stopping people running away. No, he wants the fun, the challenge.
Yeah, and again, it's very much like Under Siege 2. You've got the main bad guy, but then you've got the enforcer underneath who wants to fight, who wants to go one-on-one to prove himself with the main hero kind of thing. So you've got those elements. You've got those 90s action movie elements kind of creeping in there. I think it works really well in the context of the story. Yeah, admittedly, we do have to talk about the fact that Canary and Bard are both very scantily clad. Their clothes are all ripped.
It gets worse as it goes on.
Yeah, they really wanted her, you know, the whole almost Raquel Welch kind of thing going with Canary, where she's...
Yeah, they repeatedly make a point of telling us how good looking she is. Like, she's looking like models or actresses, whoever they name drop. I can't remember.
They say Sharon Stone at one point, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think they did someone else as well, I'm sure. But I remember a couple of times where I'm like, okay, I get it. And Land leans into that a lot.
I mean, it's a bit cheesecakey, and I don't necessarily mind that if that's the tone of the book's going to be. The funny thing is, though, is I don't necessarily know if the rest of the book otherwise actually feels like it belongs with that tone. It's just kind of isolated on its own that it likes to do this as well because it's a comic book and it's for teenage boys. So here's... Yeah,
but I mean, the problem is it is very in keeping with the aesthetic of those, 80s, 90s action movies.
True. That's true, because she's essentially got this ripped shirt that she's got tied around her chest, that kind of sort of showing off her abdomen, which I get it. She's in like a really hot climate, like, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. It's the way it gets ripped as it goes on, and it just there becomes more and more cleavage as the issue wears through.
Yes, I can only imagine all this, like she's taking on like an entire army of men at some point, and she's doing all this kicking and punching and ducking and diving, and like I can't imagine that's very convenient without a bra. That's basically my thought.
Maybe that's why she's got the shirt tied up as high and tight as she does. It's like this is the best chance she's got for any sort of containment.
I guess.
I don't know if there's any physics or logic to support that, but it's the best I've got.
So it is what it is. It's very cheesecakey, and you kind of have to accept it and just go with it. But we'll point it out
on little bits in the art. Did someone slip the colorist a note about Bard's hair? Because at the end of last issue, when it revealed he was blind, his hair looked significantly darker, and we said he looked, kind of like, Matt Murdock.
That's right. Yeah, he looked more ginger.
And then here he is extremely blonde, like extremely, like nearly canary levels of blonde for a lot of the book.
Yeah, there's some panels where he's actually more blonde looking.
Yeah, it's a little inconsistent, but it's definitely always lighter than it was last time. I wonder if someone saw that and went, yeah, okay, that looked a little Daredevil. Colorist, could you lighten that up a bit while he's blind, at least? Yeah,
but of course they're getting to like almost freedom, and Hellhound catches up and wants to fight her. So we get them fighting. It's a very good fight, to be honest. They've got the size, and she ends up getting one of them and stabbing him in the foot. And so the cavalry's came in because Babs called in the armed forces and whatnot. So Jackie Pajamas did get away, but they're they've saved all the hostages, and it kind of ends on this sort of downbeat note of like, Dinah's like, hey, why'd you let that one get away? He seems all right. And she's like, yeah, I mean, he saved your life, but I just wish he'd saved mine as well. And it ends in this kind of somber note of like an old photograph of them on her computer. Yeah, no, it was really... I think this issue was really fast-paced, felt really action-packed. I never really felt it slow down or get in the way of itself. And the one time it did like sort of take a break to tease something else, it was a really funny joke that, was led into by what we're doing. Yeah, it's hard to complain. It's a really solid issue. Yeah, I think it's held back by some of the cheesecakey art, but again, and you want to forgive it because it's leaning into the trappings of the genre rather than just being cheesecakey comicky. But yeah, a couple of little things there. But I mean, it's a solid first arc, that's for sure. Yeah, And I think I like the arc as a whole even more. I said this last issue about revealing like the context of that opening scene, but I think the more this arc went, I think each part elevated the arc as a whole. Even though there's some art issues with the cheesecake and the sleaziness of some of the visuals.
I think,
but other than that,
it's an arc that I think will benefit on a reread. If that makes sense. Yeah, how like there are TV shows where you watch them from the start and the first few episodes are like, it's fine. But if you go back after you've watched the whole TV show and you care about the characters, you enjoy it a lot more. And you know where it's going. I feel like the same with this art where I know where it's going. I know some of those things that, like in that first issue, that didn't have context at the time and felt weird. Now I know where it's going and I understand. I might enjoy more the second time around.
And I have to really compliment the use of Jason Bard here and how because in the first issue he offered this really funny twist at the end. In the second issue, we got a lot of drama out of him. Like, is he really working for the bad guys? Oh no, thankfully he is he's a good guy and he's there to save people and he's going to help Dinah. And there was a lot of good sort of like action and drama taken from that in issue 2. And then issue 3, he becomes this really interesting like extra sort of burden for Dinah, so that it's not too easy for her, where she has to like guide a blind man as she's doing this. It has this extra caveat that makes the action just a little bit more interesting. So I think he was using a really good mechanical device throughout, which
it was good. Pretty solid. I know it says next time Return of the Ravens, and I'm just wondering
one shot next,
is the one shot next? Okay, because I didn't know if that was going to be like the end of the arc that it would follow up on with the Ravens or whatever the next arc is, but next issue, that's fine by me.
And in the trade anyway, it's the next issue, so we're going to do it next as the Birds of the Prey Ravens issue 1, I think it's called. So
pretty simple.
So that's the next one. But yeah, what are we going to rate this one then, Connor?
I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's close to the 8, don't get me wrong. It's really close, but just a couple of little things hold it back.
I think I will give it the 8 because I had such a fun time reading it. I mean, obviously, there are some of the nitpicks we talked about and things to mention, but I'm impressed with this arc, and I think I loved the first one shot that we did way back at the start of the show, and I've generally enjoyed most of what came after it, but I think that was always the best one. I think this arc is the first time it's felt kind of up to that par again, and I agree.
No single issue has felt up to that, but that was a double-sized, maybe longer issue. I don't remember how long that was.
I think it was like 60 pages. So it's probably
I was going to say about 50. So but either way, I think as a whole, this 3-issue arc is on the standard with that first issue. But it's more than the sum of its parts, I would say. Like the individual issues aren't quite that good, but taken as a whole, it is up to that. Yeah,
it's really good. So I'm looking forward to reading more. I'm looking forward more to issue 4 than I am this one shot, admittedly. But like we'll see what it's like.
I mean, this one shot might be really relevant, given that it does say. At the end of this issue here, it says next time, Return of the Ravens. So I'm like, okay, they were very clearly setting that up in the main book.
Or maybe it'll be very standalone, but they just chose to bring something back from it, and that's why they've put it in the trade here. Is it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll find out in context, I'm sure.
All right. So, JSA, issue 11, Geoff Johns and David Goyer writing with... Now, I got this from DC Wiki. I don't remember reading this on the page, but I just said Buzz on art.
Buzz was on the. There was someone doing pencils and someone doing the breakdowns.
Right.
So Buzz was doing the pencils, and we had Bear, Bair, that is on breakdowns.
Buzz and Bear.
That
still sounds made up to me. This doesn't sound real.
I know, but that I'm checking. I'm looking at the credits page in the issue right now. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, JSA issue 11. And things escalate very quickly, and
this was one of those issues where I read the first page. I went, "Oh, it's this one. We're doing this story."
Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, I did the same thing. As soon as I saw Al's mum in the plane, I went, "Oh, it's this one."
Yeah,
I knew what it was. It starts off with Al, of course, Rothstein being Atom Smasher. In case you've not got all the names yet, and I wouldn't blame you. There's a lot of characters. We're learning them as we go, but. His mum's on the plane, and she's basically talking to this young woman. She's like, "Hey, my son's not, met a nice woman yet, blah blah blah." And she's kind of like, she's got that look in her eye, and then Cobra shows up on the screen, and basically says, "Yeah, I'm going to crash your plane," and this is basically it. And I want to compliment the writing here, because this little note at the bottom of this page that leads into the 2-page spread in the next page. No, this can't be happening, Terry Rothstein thinks. And then you see the plane exploding in the next page, and it just has a little caption that says, "My son is a superhero." That, like, this is a character who is introduced in one page and is killed off in the very next, and somehow it has impact.
Oh, it absolutely does. And I think I want to really highlight the name of this arc here is called Split. And I think the use, there are reasons for that. We'll get into that. It splits the team later. We'll get to that. But the page that it reveals that is a split page double spread, with the top half being this plane explosion, and then the second half being the JSA kind of round tabling around this with Bones.
Yeah, and Bones.
But just the double split there being the way that they worked the title arc into the page layout here, I think is really great art stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, of course, the reason why it's called Split is because the team have to split into two because there's two threats at the same time. One being Cobra, and the fact that Cobra is saying that if you don't, give me, was it he's wanting all the money? I think something like that.
He wants something or other. I don't know. Because if not, he's gonna take out all the world leaders.
Yeah, he's gonna take out all the cities, basically all the capital cities. Yeah. So pretty major stuff. And the team, and when we see Al at the table, because I was reading this, and I was like, I can't remember. Does he already know? Did he find out here? But he already knows. You just see Canary kind of holding them, she can't even fit her arm around him, but he's just kind of distraught. It's good stuff. And then out of nowhere, the old Star Spangled Kid shows up. It's wait a minute.
Sylvester Pemberton just walks in and be like, "What are you all doing? This is my team, you bunch of chumps." And
they basically get very accusatory of each other and don't know what's going on. And then it's our man who basically kind of realizes that something's not right with the timelines. And the extent is, now correct me if I'm wrong, I couldn't remember. Have we encountered extant before in GSA yet?
Not in this book.
Not in this book yet. Okay, let's go. I couldn't remember if it popped up yet. So I've not read the big event that kind of did the extant thing that that brought Hawk and turned them into extant. I've not read that. Was that 0 Hour? No, it wasn't 0 Hour, was it? Was it?
I don't know. My first thought was 0 Hour as well, but I don't think it is.
I think
either. I did the same thing.
I think it might be 0 Hour. I mean, people can tell us in the comments. I think it's 0 Hour though. But anyway, so the extant is messing with the timeline, and this is why we have this weird splinter here where this other Star Spangled Kid shows up, and this okay, we have to deal with this now. We can't just let him run around rampant. And they even mention all the people that he killed as well, because he killed the original Midnight, he killed our man, he killed the Hawks.
That's the level of threat that this is, and it was 0 Hour,
cool.
It's more just no, this is a villain who was enough for a line wide event. This is not some chump change thing, and to just throw that in as, oh, by the way, here's a second plot to deal with, is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, so Sans okay, we have to split in two. Obviously, our man with the other ship has to go after extant because no one else can do it.
Time ship.
Sorry, time ship, yeah. And so it's okay, so I'll lead the team to go and deal with Cobra, who's on...
Yeah.
What island's he on again? I forget.
Black Hawk.
Black Hawk Island, there you go.
Yeah,
I knew it was a notable one. I knew it was one that we knew. I just couldn't remember which one it was.
Oh yeah. And they're like, okay, well, let's call in the reserves because we might need some more bodies on this one.
Yeah, so Hippolyta comes in, Starman comes in, Dr. Midnight comes in, the new Dr. Midnight. So we see a little bit on the time ship with Stargirl. Well, she's not called that yet, obviously, still, but she's talking to Spangled Kid, and he's like, "Hey, I can teach you how to use that belt if you want." And she's like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So, but that's basically, we see them go off into a vortex, basically, and we just see Extant sort of sneaking up behind them, and that's basically it. We don't get any more of this issue. Obviously,
they're the next issue, I assume.
Yeah, we're saving that for next issue. We stick with the other team, who are in a jet. Starman's there, and they're sneaking into this old base within Black Hawk Island, and they've all got their mouth breathers on. They go inside, and they kind of sneak around, and sand's going through the floors, Atom Smasher's smashing. That sounds redundant to say, but
it's what he does best.
He's angry, he's upset. One of the little subtle things here I really like is that when you see Canary and Midnight fighting, they're fighting kind of side by side. If you remember right, we met Midnight through Canary. Canary was in trouble and he saved her. So they've already worked as a team before in his introduction. And at the end of the page, she says, "Nice work, Midnight." And he like cracks a little joke about crack no jokes about just what the Doctor ordered.
Yeah.
So
but they're making quite the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hinting that there's a pairing here of sorts. Just subtly.
Yeah, it's not overt. It's more just they've got a bit of a connection.
Yeah, that's building up some camaraderie, and so I did appreciate the joke here because we get an introduction to another character.
Starman's blasting around with the staff.
Yes, and we get a sphere, which of course leads to Mr. Terrific, who, if you remember, was given the choice of joining the GSA. Sand did extend him that offer. At the very least, he said, "Come visit sometime." So they did set this up. This was way back in the Sand issue, where he was like getting a deal on his powers. But Terrific's there. He's mapped out the area, and he's there to help. So. But there's a Phantasm joke.
I knew that was what you were going to
Oh, yeah,
about.
It's great. I love it. Starman cracks a joke about Phantasm. If you've seen Phantasm, you'll know that there's flying chrome balls in that kill people. They're glorious.
Yeah, Starman's a little terrified of them.
Yes, he doesn't like it very much. So, and and obviously I'm thinking, should they have brought Al along for this mission? Because he's like, yeah, if we get to that, if we get to Cobra, you save him for me. Like, he's very upset.
It's very personal for him.
Yeah. So Sand goes into this control room where he takes out all the dudes, walks through the wall using his powers, and that's kind of it. But of course, as he's in there, because he's there to save, because they've got this. Oh, who was it again? I've sort of glossed over the name.
Airwave.
Thank you. Airwave, they're using him essentially to do what they're doing with all electronics. That's why they can control the plane. That's why they can broadcast their video signal worldwide. They're using his powers to do this. Airwave is I mean, he's basically just like a D-list villain that's been held captive here. I don't think we're alone in probably never having heard of him before this issue.
No, they're just using him because he's expendable.
Yeah. But of course, there's a great panel in here where sneaking up behind Sand is oh god, what was his name? Catalyst. Yes. So one of Area's former teammates. Yeah. So again, another D-lister. I mean, it's notable that these characters are throwing in here, which I'm sure are from history that I'm sure Johns is pulling from obscure places. Are relatively new to us, because even though I've read this before, like every single one I'm having to double check. Oh, who's this guy called again? Like.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I've read this. I mean, this is probably my third or fourth time on this specific batch of issues.
Yeah,
and I could still struggle with some of these smaller names.
Yeah, Catalyst does generally, but he's able to shock him, and we get this big ending where basically Cobra wants to show the world the consequences for them trying to save the day and interfere with Cobra's plans, and he broadcasts to the world. We see it broadcast in Times Square. Him murdering with a laser beam Sand. That's the end of the issue. He blasts it. We don't see it's off panel, the actual contact, and then he just laughs maniacally, and that is the end of the issue. It's a hell of an ending. Like, as far as the ends of issues go, this is a pretty good one.
I love that final panel of the laughing. It's very Joker-esque in the style of lettering, the way the laughs just come up in the red text behind him. It's not constrained to any sort of bubble or text box or anything. It's just the entire panel, and he's just in the way of some of it.
Yeah, what I dig about this is that I think Sand, this early on in the run, like, obviously they've set him up to be the leader, but part of you does suspect, like, did they build him up this much so that they could do this big dramatic death and like have it stick? Like, are they pulling a Doyle, shall I say? but doing this, and I mean, I guess I'm mildly spoiling things by suggesting that he's probably not gone for good, but the ending of this is really effective. I think it's really shocking, really dramatic, and the sort of the public display of it, and it makes it feel like, oh wait, how are they going to deal with this now? That like Cobra's completely one-upped them, and that's the other half of the team are fighting this villain that took the entire DC universe to tackle. So this feels like it escalates really good. It starts with a bang and it ends with a bang. Now, admittedly, I do think the opening's more effective somehow. I don't know how that happened, but the start and end of this are exceptional.
Yeah, that first page and the first panel of the second page, I guess, is possibly some of the best work in this entire series so far.
Yeah. No, it's that page turn. It's that connective tissue between page 1 and page 2.
Yeah.
Is wonderful. And then this ending here is just, it goes in a direction where if you, at the start of this issue, you would never have called it would end with the villain assassinating on live TV one of our main heroes to prove that they shouldn't have interfered. Because I think it's not so much that he needed to feel more villainous, because the opening is so dark and makes him feel like he's just a vile prick from the get-go. But this ending says that not only is he that awful, not only is he this dangerous in what he does, he's this much of a threat to our main characters. They can't just walk in and save the day.
Yeah, that's it. It's all well and good. Oh, he can take down an undefended plane, right? Any villain can do that. We've seen that countless times with them just taking down a building or a plane or whatever, and it's not that impressive in its own right. This issue made it impressive by giving us a character we cared about on the plane first. But showing he can actually take out one of our heroes as relatively easily as he does is what shows that he's actually a really big threat. And going into the next issues, it gives it some real weight beyond how are the rest of this, or not even the rest of the team, how are half of the team going to stop it? Yeah.
It makes the stakes suddenly feel super high in a way that a lot of comic books can't achieve after several issues. The fact that in one issue it makes that this plot feel super weighty, and it's only half of the plot technically because there's two going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So no, it's a pretty big deal. If anything, I think the last couple of issues have been fantastic, but maybe this is the arc where JSA by Johns really becomes JSA by Johns, and why everyone talks about it so fondly is just how expertly this is pulled off.
I agree, and I think it's funny. It's funny how much longer Goyer is a co-writer. Like it's a lot longer than you think.
Oh sure, yeah.
It's like Goyer's a co-writer till like the 50s or something like that. As much as this is, even the DC trades market as this is JSA by Geoff Johns. Like everyone knows, but Goyer has this credit for 50 odd issues still, and it's just way more than you think because it just feels so timeless, classic Johns.
Yeah. All right then, what are you giving it?
I will give it I give it a 9, honestly. I was tempted to give it the 8.5, but I think it earns just a little bit more than that.
I don't know. I feel like my debate is more, is it a 9 or a 9.5?
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, come on. The start and end of this are exceptional.
No, they are phenomenal. Sometimes I'm there thinking I'm being generous, going up to the 9, and then you're making me look bad.
I feel like the only reason why this isn't a 10, because the way I talk about the opening especially is that's the sort of couple of pages I expect in a 10 out of 10 comic, and the only reason why it's not in consideration for the 10 is because the middle of it sort of becomes more just sort of set-up-y than it's not a bad setup, it's good setup, but it's not as exceptional as that first couple of pages is.
I agree. I think ultimately there's a little too much of that for me to even go to the 9.5. It's more like, okay, the stuff with the other half of the team, there's like 3 or 4 pages there which are perfectly good, necessary setup for whatever they're going to do in the next issue. But in this issue itself, they're like, yeah, okay, those pages were fine. And it's that section which probably drags it down from being, higher, even though I'd give it a 9.
I'll give it a 9 as well, but let it be known I considered going higher. All right. Shazam, The New Beginning, issue 1. Roy Thomas and Dann Thomas writing with Tom Mandrake on the art. This is a 4-part series. This is essentially a mini-series that to re-establish the post-crisis origin of Billy Batson as Captain Marvel. And so it's kind of interesting doing this because obviously we started with Batman from post-crisis, and obviously year 1 wasn't the very first thing that came out, but it was pretty early on, and we just finished that in this episode. It's interesting to sort of tackle this, which came around a similar time, re-establishing this origin. And
it's kind of fun as well because we've had not that long ago the Johns re-establishing the Shazam origin in the the current continuity. I mean, it was part of the New 52 stuff the Justice League backups at the time. But
what's funny about it is that that's the version that I think we're more familiar with. So it's actually kind of interesting just for us to go back and say, okay, what was this post-crisis? Like, what?
Yeah, there's some beats in it, like Savannah being his uncle.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all. And him wanting to adopt Billy again. So like, I was getting some series of unfortunate events vibes from some of this.
Oh, yeah, I was too, and I was wondering if that was just me, but I could see Neil Patrick Harris playing Savannah. Is that so bad?
Yeah, I could see it. I don't know if this came out before those books were written. They might have been. I don't know.
Oh, they definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah, those books were like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I thought that, but I wasn't sure. It's one of those things where they could be from the 70s for all I goddamn know.
No, I was reading those as they came out, pretty much.
So we start with the stormy night with the car crash that kills Billy's parents. I actually really liked the art in this first couple of pages. I thought the atmosphere was really strong.
I think I like everything except the panel where the car actually crashes. I think going into the purple background overdoes it a little bit. It takes away a little bit of the weight that every other panel has.
There's something about fire in like 80s and 90s comics I really like. The wreckage in the following page, I really like the way the fire looks.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I'm into it. I mean, the art is generally pretty good. There's the odd face that doesn't work for me all that much, but
it's very much of its time.
But at the same time, though, I think Savannah's face almost always looks fantastic. Like, he always looks just perfectly sinister.
Fantastically evil.
Yeah, it's great.
It's you look at this and you go, yeah, I can see why you cast Mark Strong.
So so we see Billy with his uncle that he likes, the uncle who's the magician who's poor and has no money. And we get this scene where his uncle has to tell him like what's happened because he gets the phone call, like telling him.
Yeah, the uncle's already looking after him for the evening. The parents are presumably out for the evening, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were going to the theatre. Who knows?
Yeah, date night.
Yeah.
And it's this heartbreaking kind of scene, and then we see him in the rain, and that first panel of Savannah when he comes up to talk to him is just the way his head's so shrunken. Like, I mean, that's the one complaint I say about casting Mark Strong to play him, is Mark Strong's got such a big, strong jawline, and
he does.
Like in Savannah in comics, he's so squirmy. The best comparison in live action would maybe be the character from Sin City, the yellow bastard, maybe. Was that him?
Yeah, I can see it.
It's only a live action sort of example I can think of that's got a kind of face that I would associate with this. But so Savannah clearly has future plans in mind for the boy. So we get a whole courtroom scene where they're arguing custody of the child because Savannah married into the family and he's more financially stable. But there's a whole ruse where Savannah has these two people. I mean, I think they're technically, like, he is their guardian, but they're like, they've already left the house. They're they're lying about living with him.
They're living in the dorm, which, but the way he talks about it seems like it's still like on campus of the house, like it's like a separate building, not like I'll go back home to your dorm somewhere else. It still feels like they're relatively close.
If we're still going with unfortunate events, this is the little troop pretending to be his kids.
Yeah. If this was not inspired, if this didn't have some inspiration on unfortunate events, I would be surprised.
Yeah, so Billy is thinking that he's ruining his uncle's life because his uncle, they're going to give it to the poor uncle because he has a relationship with Billy. Billy seems to like him. They get on well. But when Billy hears, after a little bit of coercion from those others talking to him, he hears that his uncle will have to give up being a magician, and he's like, I can't ruin his life. I can't do that. So Billy actually says he wants to go with Savannah, and he gets kind of mean about it to sort of convince the good uncle to walk away, and it's kind of heartbreaking actually. You feel bad for him.
It's that classic, throwing the stones at the dog to make it run away for its own safety.
Yeah. But when they get back to the house, he's basically got a storage room. We overhear later that it was just to get the inheritance money for his cookie multiverse schemes because Savannah's trying to break into other worlds.
He's got some shenanigans on the go.
Yeah, he's got a secret room where he's doing his experiments. And he treats him like shit. He's Count Olaf, essentially.
He really is.
Billy, gets into fights. He's at a new school. He doesn't like it. It's all these things. But once he hears this from Savannah, he goes on the run. He runs out the house, and he runs through the rain and he gets to the subway station. So the idea of the subway being a factor in how he gets his powers is still here. It's still an element.
It's one of the most familiar beats in this book.
Yeah. And he's led into the subway by this mysterious figure behind there, and he sees the seven deadly sins statues up in the... So he's essentially been transported to the Rock of Eternity without realizing that he's moved anywhere. And Shazam shows up and is like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I am Shazam. And...
Say my name.
Yeah, he gets right too. He's like, say my name. So we get this big full page where he says Shazam, and he's like, wait a minute. What? I feel like I'm blowing up like a balloon. What's going on?
Interestingly, something went wrong, because he talks about it. He's like, I'm still Billy Batson. He's got, his own mind. He's just got the body and powers of Shazam. And the wizard's confused. He's like, no, you should be Captain Marvel. You shouldn't be yourself still in that body. And he remembers the previous timeline.
Oh, Shazam does, yeah. We'll get to that in a second. But I think it's maybe an interesting facet that this is a mistake, and one that I suspect that this 4-issue mini will do something with. Like, maybe why it didn't work on Billy exactly, why he still does remember who he is for some reason. What's
interesting to me is, for us, I think that's the only version of Shazam, Captain Marvel we're familiar with, right? That this is Billy just in an adult body. And this presents the idea, was this not always the case, like pre-crisis?
Well, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, just because it's a mistake that now in this continuity doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't this way before. It just wasn't a mistake before.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. This presented this idea that I'm thinking, oh, was that not the case before? And I don't actually know if that's true or not. I don't know what expectation it's playing off.
Yeah, but this could equally just, the change could equally just be the idea that it's a mistake, not the fact that he does still be Billy inside his head.
Absolutely, it could be.
I have no idea. But no, you're right. The wizard does talk about the fact that he remembers the previous timeline. He talks about pre-crisis, about how there was a Shazam family, or a Marvel family. There was Freddy and there was Mary. And we see this one classic panel, but he's like, no, I can't think about that. To remember this past timeline would lead to madness. So he's like, okay, we just have to do this again. And he kind of, I love when he grumbled a little bit, because when Billy's like talking back to him, he's like, maybe I should have started with a girl this time. Maybe I should have went a different route.
I think it's almost a little strange that this was presented as an option in the late 80s. Just throwaway line here. I'm a little surprised that come the New 52 Shazam reboot, that maybe we didn't start with Mary instead.
Yeah,
almost.
we totally could have. There was no reason why you couldn't have started with Mary and had Billy maybe like become, just basically swap roles essentially. It's possible.
Works perfectly fine.
But the wizard explains to Captain Marvel, because that's what he is. He's Captain Marvel. That's what they call him. In this, and he explains that, hey, you're here to defeat Black Adam. The one like person I gave my powers to that. It didn't go so well. It didn't go so hot, and he was evil. He became corrupted by the power, and you have to sort of take him on, almost as if the wizard knows that Black Adam's about to be brought back to the world, because that's obviously how we end this issue with Savannah. But there's this running thing, because what I liked about this is that he says Shazam again. He ends up back outside at the sort of the metal gate of the subway station, and I thought they were going to do a thing where he didn't understand how he could become Captain Marvel again, but I love that he immediately said Shazam by accident, and it immediately happened.
Yeah, because he's yelling at the wizard like, "Do you hear me, Shazam?" Because obviously that's his name.
Yeah,
and switches back, and I love that there's this beat that he doesn't realize that he switches at first. There's not like a conscious awareness that he's different. It's just he realizes the surroundings, that he's beaten this door into a pulp, and he's like, shit.
Yeah, and he ends up flying, and he's like, oh shit, I can fly. And it kind of like almost brings in the strength of this, the wisdom of that. It does that stuff sort of gradually as he's like discovering new things, and kind of like talks rather, because I feel like there's a trap of almost like, and some good versions have done this, where the wizard will just like list these things. He'll just list all the all the things that the word Shazam
I really
means.
like they're on like a stone tablet behind the wizard's head.
Yeah,
of like, you know, wisdom of Solomon, you know, its speed of Mercury.
Mercury, yeah, Mercury's speed.
Yeah, but they're all kind of there, so you know it's there in the art. You can just read them. It's fine. Don't need exposition from the wizard.
Yeah, and then so he turns back into Billy to leave, but it just sort of, you know, it leaves there where he's not really sure what he should do now. He walks off into the storm, all dramatic, and the last page is that Savannah, tinkering with these scientific doohickeys, does finally break some sort of multiverse door, and out comes Black Adam, who says he made it. He's back after 5,000 years, and it's hard not to hear Rita Repulsa in my head when I read that line. Finally, after 10,000 years, I'm free.
Yeah, no, I got that as well. It not its fault, but definitely was thinking about it.
This came first, so it's just, you know, it's not.
But I mean, it's the same. You know, we're mentioning that. We're mentioning unfortunate events. This came before any of these things.
Yes, it did. So,
but you know, it's the same thing we talk about whenever we, you know, review like older movies that have, for our standards, predictable twists because we've seen them aped on thousands of times since. Not necessarily that movie's fault. It's the same here.
I thought this issue was pretty solid. We've not really spoken about what we think of it yet all that much, beyond just talking about the moments themselves.
Yeah, I actually I agree. I think it's obviously a little denser than a lot of other comics that we're used to right now.
Yeah, it's a couple
by its nature.
It's a couple pages more. It's 24 pages instead of 22.
Yeah. Not a huge difference, and it doesn't feel extremely long. I think the pacing's pretty good throughout.
Yeah, I think. Do you know, we read so many different versions of Superman, so many different versions of Batman and Wonder Woman, even Flash and Green Lantern. There is something really nice about just getting a dedicated. We're going to focus and it does make you kind of sad that there's not maybe longer ongoings for some of these other characters who do tend to get ignored a lot of the time. Not that there's none, but it was really nice to sort of say, hey, I'm reading a Captain Marvel issue 1. This is kind of cool. I'm happy to be reading a story, even if it's just another origin story about a character who doesn't get as much love typically.
I think I appreciated how different the origin story was to what I expected, even though there were all the familiar beats, right? With we've got the wizard, we got Say the Name, we got the 7 Deadly Sins, we got Black Adam. All those things are in there, the subway, but all the context around Billy feels, for us, I think, fresh, even though, you know, this is how it was for years, decades. But given where we've come into comics and our experience with Shazam and Captain Marvel here, this feels like a kind of fresh to us. Yeah.
And it's interesting as well that it does include both Savannah and Black Adam. You know, much like Johnsy's origin. I
think there's a lot of temptation to just lean into one or the other with modern origins now. That goes for any hero origin. It's really tempting just to lean into one thing and focus. Whereas this, you know, it comfortably juggles those two so far, at least. Well, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but this doesn't have me worried at all.
No, not at all. It's interesting as well that much like Year One, the Batman Year One, that is, it's another 4-issue story. So I expect this was probably a testing ground as well. Like, can we have an ongoing? Does it sell well enough? Unlike Batman, where obviously Batman sells well enough for the ongoing.
Yeah. So they could just throw it in the middle of its main book. Whereas with this, you want to test that.
Yeah. So, I'm intrigued. But no, I had fun with it. I think I enjoyed the kid in the horrible situation with the horrible new step parent kind of situation. You know, that whole vibe was working for me. And not just because I was imagining Savannah going, run away, run away.
I would love to watch a take on this origin just done in that style.
But the actual wizard stuff was fun, and I enjoyed the art for the most part. Like I say, the odd face, especially on young Billy, I thought was maybe the worst of it. But Savannah looked creepy. I think Black Adam looks pretty good. All that stuff, and Captain Marvel as well. You know, when Captain Marvel becomes Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I think there's only one panel that I feel the face looks a bit funny on Captain Marvel, and it's right at the end, not the very last page, but the one before. and it's where he's got the big vertical panel on the right, where he's kind of in shadow. It looks a bit off there, as opposed to where he looks in every other panel.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, well, I'm looking forward to reading more of this. Much better than Emperor Joker already, I'll tell you that much. What are you giving it?
I'm going to give it a solid 7. It's tempting to give it the 7.5, but I'm just going to shy away from that, I think.
Yeah. It's almost a bit of a running gag now that I just rate things higher than you, but I feel...
You say that. Last episode, you rated pretty much everything the same as me.
That's true. Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, I'll go a little bit higher. I think I'll give it the 8. I had a good time reading this. I really had fun discovering... I love going back to eras like this and kind of like digging into like comics that I haven't read yet and discovering stuff. It's the sort of thing that I like doing with movies as well, and I started doing that with movies a lot earlier on than I did with comic books. So there's still a lot of this still to discover for me with comics, and I think I like it. So
I think there's less of a desire or a need to do this with comics, because I mean there's a more modern Shazam origin that we can just go with, right? And we can just read that. It's fine. We don't need to read this.
Yep.
Whereas with a lot of movies, they didn't necessarily remake. Sometimes they did just remake them, but they didn't always just remake them. Sometimes, if you want to experience that story, you have to just go and watch that movie.
Yeah, there's a lot less desire to it, but I desire to do it, which is why I made a show called Previously in the Multiverse.
I'm here. I'm not saying I don't have the desire to read these. I just meant desire was maybe not the right choice, but more necessity. There's a lack of necessity to read these because we've got an origin that works perfectly fine.
Exactly. So I made one. I made a necessity.
You made an excuse. Yeah, you did.
Yes. All right.
And somehow roped me into it.
Batgirl issue 8. Bryan Q. Miller writing with guest writer or guest artist, I should say. Talent Caldwell, Yvel, Guichet, and John Stanisci. So this, I'll just say it first of all. The art is a step down from the normal.
Significantly. I think, okay, first thing, this isn't all over the place in terms of art. The Talent Caldwell is the main artist for the vast majority of the book. Those other two are guest artists just for the end sequence. I think it's just the final 2 pages with the Red Robin stuff. I suspect they were on the Robin book. Yeah,
probably. So here's the thing. The very first page, I saw Stephanie's face and went, oh no.
Yeah, I did the exact same.
Now, I will say the colours still look pretty good. The colours, I don't know if the colours is the same, but it feels in tone with the previous issues. Unfortunately, the faces are not particularly great. So this issue does kind of have a bit of a lead off into other stuff that's not going to be fulfilled in this book. Interesting little tidbit here. I've never read this issue before because this issue wasn't in the original trades for this run.
Was it not?
No, they left this out. And because of that, I always assumed it was more of a direct crossover with Red Robin, so you had to read the Red Robin for it to make sense. And for the most part, you actually don't. It works on its own until the ending.
This is the setup that goes into Red Robin stuff afterwards.
Yeah. So the ending sort of sets something up that's never paid off in this, but otherwise it's actually quite easy to read, and it has a lot of good stuff in it. So I think the issue is good for her character stuff and for the scenarios we're given. Just the art kind of sucks.
I'm going to tell you now, it drags it down a good point or two.
Yeah, the faces are not good. The big puffy lips are really distracting. On Steph.
Dialogue is really on point though.
Oh yeah, I mean it's Bryan Q. Miller writing, so the dialogue's great. I love her making fun of him because she's training in the cave and he shows up as Red Robin, because this is of course in the timeline, this is where he's Red Robin, and she's like, why do you look like Dr. Midnight, which is especially funny to me given that I just read a JSA issue.
She's not wrong.
Yeah, and it does.
It's funny. Do you know, this feels like the Red Robin stuff happened recently, and this was him poking fun at that costume change. Eerily prescient, because it feels like what just happened with Tim Drake yet again, with the Drake costume. And I don't think I read it, but I think you did. But someone in another issue made a joke about the costume.
Yeah, I mean the dialogue is and obviously the narration, like it has been, is wonderful. Like there's a moment where Tim says, "I really need you to not be useless right now," and in her narration she says, child, and then Tim's like, oh, okay, that sounded way harsher than it should have done, and she's like, no, you don't get to dial that back. You don't get to like take that tone with me. Like the back and forth is so good, and I don't think I expected it to be this hostile between them. Where there's one point later in the issue where she's just in her narration going, "I hate him, I hate him, I hate him."
Yeah, this is the broody Tim era.
Yes.
Post Bruce's death, where he's not in a great place. Not Tim's finest moment.
Yeah, I also expect that this stuff that Red Robin's doing is building up to the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, or is just after it.
I think just before, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Yes, it must be after it, because he mentions Raz is about, so I think it's after it. But it feels like it's related to that stuff, because he's talking about Raz. That's why he's
that was
here.
his crusades that he was on, right?
So Babs is on a date with the dude that the cop that Jim tried to set her up with, and they're kind of hitting it off where he's kind of like playing ball for ball here, where when she's kind of asking questions like, why would you come to Gotham when you can do this? And he's like, well, why would you teach in Gotham when you can do this? And he's like, oh, okay, they're actually kind of equals here in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and she kind of apologizes that, last time it wasn't his fault. It was, she wasn't in the right place, and he was right when he called her out on that, and she just reacted badly. No bad blood over it.
Yeah, do you know what the sad part is it's not amazing, but the men are much better looking in this than the women. I think this artist has a real hard time with...
I mean, it's very small increments better.
Do you know what I think it is? I think his tactic seems to be to give the women big puffy lips and give the men no lips, and I think the no lips works in his favour.
It's less distracting.
Yes.
I think you're right.
It works in his favour. But again, they're bickering as they're looking into why the satellites are down, why there's no communications, all the rest of it. But like I say, the banter between them is just really good. It's really strong throughout.
Yeah, that bit where she says like, pwn, and he's like, I don't think that's how you say it. And I like how the text does spell it with the P.
Yeah, I actually really like. There's one point where there's a fun little bit where she actually sends Babs a message in the Ricochet, the bike thing she's got, because she puts the autopilot on back to the cave so Babs can read it and know what she's doing. But so they have to infiltrate this party thing because the assassins are going after Leslie Tompkins, and Lucius Fox is there as well, and they have to go in sort of as civilians. So Tim goes and steals them some outfits, and she's in this. Of course, it's a purple dress. We're in Power Rangers rules here.
To be fair, I think Tim did that intentionally. I think this is benefit of the doubt here. This isn't just them dressing their colours. This is Tim having a bit of fun.
I wasn't complaining about it.
I just in context, I think there's a good reason for it.
No, I mean, they are with the boobs here. I might complain a bit about.
Yes.
Going a bit over the top with that there. It's especially noticeable when they make her so goddamn skinny.
Yeah, and she's so in the foreground, and Tim's just there in the background with everyone, and it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does indeed. But there's a great moment. I don't know what page it's on yet, but there's a moment where Steph basically says one of the things that should be in a narration box. It's in quotations, but it sounds like the sort of thing she would have in the narrations box. And Tim says, "You realise you're not using your inside voice right now." And I thought it was really witty and smart because it did sound like something that would be in her box rather than in the speech bubble.
It does, and it's things like that where you go, "Oh, this is why Tim and Steph had a relationship, right?" That banter when they're not angry at each other, those moments. Like, okay, I see it.
And the other thing is one of the things that I've hated about Steph in Rebirth onwards, when they've brought her back to at least to a point more prominent place, is that she's been so tied to Tim. It's always been she's Tim's girlfriend or she's Tim's whatever, right? And it's really frustrating to me. And I think it's notable that in this issue here, first of all, it helps that she's got her own ongoing series where Tim only factors into it for one issue, really. But is that here, because they've already split up and because there's kind of this mutual thing where they have this history that is coming up, they have feelings for each other, it's affecting how they speak to each other and how they think in the moment, but at no point is it just, well, she's only defined by what she is to Tim. And and vice versa. Whereas, in the new books, it's like them always talking about their future. It's them always talking about this or that. This was far more entertaining to read. It was far more exciting to read because it was playing off their history and how it affects the fact that they've both moved on into other things, which I guess is the problem with comics a lot of the times, is that it refuses to let things move on. And the great thing about this era of the Bat family, and this 2009 to 2011, is that things got to move on because they killed off Bruce and they let all the characters kind of get to new places. And Steph's...
It ran wild a little bit.
Yeah, and Steph obviously only became Batgirl because of all that, and it's kind of great that, it's one of the big casualties of that going away is that we lost Steph as Batgirl.
I loved some of this period. The Heart of Hush stuff, or the Heart of Hush?
Heart of Hush was before R.I.P., but you're talking about when Hush went on in Streets of Gotham and all those other things.
Streets of Gotham, yeah. I always mix up the two titles of which is which, but yeah, that whole section of just stuff going on. This is where you've got Riddler being a PI. You've got the Gotham City Sirens stuff going on. Gotham in this period flourished, like it hasn't in decades.
No, it was wonderful, and I mean, there's arguably individual books that have been fantastic since, but I don't think the line as a whole.
No, like we just pulled out three completely different points. In between the Hush stuff, the Batgirl stuff, the Siren stuff, and even aside from the main book, that's three various facets of Gotham being fascinating. Whether you like all of them or not is debatable, but doing different stuff.
And then you had Snyder's Detective as well. I think.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Usually the main Batman book was probably the weakest element of all the
it was. But then look at it now. Sure, there are arguably books that are individually as good, if not better quality than an individual story in this era. But Gotham as a whole is less interesting.
Right now, there probably isn't, though. I mean, Tynion's Batman's probably the only thing that comes close, because Detective we dropped, Batgirl we dropped.
Yeah, okay. When I say right now, I mean in the Rebirth era, really.
Okay.
There's an argument for okay, you're reading the first half of King's Run, and that's up there.
Sure. Yes. So anyways, Supergirl destroyed the satellite, or whatever Raz was using. They call Supergirl, and Batgirl says thanks. It's a whole thing, and so, and they have this moment on the roof where they almost kiss when they're having a tender moment, and Steph stops and says, "No, we can't let our guard down. This isn't what we want. This isn't good for us," and it leaves the relationship in the past. And then it has this tease of this Prue, presumably from Red Robin's book, because I have no idea who she is.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I'm on DC Universe reading these, and it gives me the original solicit text underneath. And it actually, outright says Collision Part 2 continued from Red Robin 9 and ends in continued in Red Robin 10. And I don't think you need to read Red Robin 9 before.
Honestly,
I think you're fine.
The only thing in this issue that feels like, oh shit, I'm missing something, or it feels like this should connect to something else, is this last page. That is the only thing. And
I think it's very notable that those are the guest artists, even more so on the extra artists are on those last, I think it's 2 pages, I think they're in. They show up, and it's very clearly this is the Red Robin bit.
Yeah. I'll have to say I don't really like the art in the last 2 pages either, if I'm honest.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly better, but I mean,
I don't know. Tim's head. See that panel where Steph's stopped his hand, and it's just split in two. His head in that top part, I think, looks really weird angle wise.
That's fair. I think the faces are a lot more consistent, even across this 2 pages. They're a lot better. They feel consistent panel to panel, which I think is more important than some of the other stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was fun for me because I never read this issue before.
I did not realise this wasn't in the original trades, because I've only ever read this like this.
With the thick trades?
I read it in single issues originally. Yeah.
No, I had the 3 back in the physical days when I had physical books. I had the 3 trades, 3 volumes. Obviously now they're in 2 thicker trades, which is what I've got the digital versions of now. So it was nice to be able to read this and kind of fill in that one little gap that was there in the run. But I mean, honestly, story wise, really solid. All the character stuff between Tim and Steph was really good. So I think my worries of this being tied to their relationship was a little bit, unfounded once I actually read it.
Yeah, and I would say please don't judge Tim too harshly on this issue. He was going through a rough period. He's still the best Robin.
Yeah, sure. So
we'll get to some of that stuff. Don't you worry.
yeah, sure. So no, but the art, of course, is definitely the weakest by far this book has had. It's not even a question. It does definitely feel like a fill-in artist. Probably to give Garbett an issue off so he can come back strong.
I hope we're back to Garbett next time. I'm actually going to quickly check because
I can tell you
it's Garbett next time. We're good.
We're into the good covers next issue as well.
We've got like a handful of Sejic covers now. Is this Sejic? It looks like it could be.
I thought it was Art Germ.
Oh, it could be Art Germ. I'm looking at like a tiny thumbnail.
Okay. But I've not actually checked.
You say good covers, like the cover for issue 2 of this series. That's the orange background with her pulling up the boot.
Oh yeah, I mean no, it's had good covers, but
phenomenal.
When I think of this series though, the covers I think of are this next batch. It's Her in the Rain.
I think it's notable that those are the covers they use for the big trades.
It is, yeah. It's Her in the Rain. In fact, the one, not this next issue, but there's one where her mask is kind of ripped and she's sort of like just standing in the rain. Like that image is always stuck out to me. Is what I think of first when I think of this run. Makes the costume sing. So don't get me wrong, the boobs are a little too, separated as it were, but the material, like in the way the purple looks at the sides and all that, it looks gorgeous.
I'm just skimming ahead of the thumbnails here. I think it's interesting how they're very clearly split into these 3 segments. So you have these Noto covers at the start, and then you have these. You say it's Art Germ. I'll take your word for it.
I could be wrong.
It very well could be. We have a series of these covers, and if it's not, it's someone who's doing similar style for this section. And then we have what I can only assume is Dustin Wynn's covers. It looks because very distinctive style, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like his covers through to the end of the book. Then.
Yeah, I remember that being a thing. But no, so good issue from a writing and story perspective, dodgy from art. What are you giving it?
6.5, and that is Dr. Full Point for art, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm actually, in a weird way, say that I would have rated it higher, but I'm going to deduct more for the art. So I'm going to give it a 6 for the art.
I can't really argue with it.
Well, not for the art. I'm going to give it a 6 because the art is why it's down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably rating it a little bit higher just because it's my boy Tim.
Sure. Yes. The third best Robin.
How dare you? How dare you rate that little shit above Tim?
Oh, Damien's better than Tim. I'll stand by that. Look, I agree he's better than Jason. Like, there's no fighting there.
The bar is so low that's borderline an insult still.
Yeah, but he can still be high above the bar. It's not...
I mean, he could be, but you just go, he's better than Jason. You didn't say he's significantly better. He's inconsequentially so much better. No, he's better than Jason. No, we'll not stand for it.
Or we go the opposite. You have to go under the bar. It's like limbo, right? And Tim's nipple grazed the bar. It grazed the bar.
I like how we switch from the bar to par, essentially, there, in terms of how we're using the scale.
Yes.
He's slightly below par.
No, I said bar.
Yes, I know. I'm making a point of switching to par, which would be, par being the baseline, and below par is a good thing.
Okay, sure.
It's golf, Pete. Come on.
I know golf, but I wasn't talking about golf. I was talking about limbo.
I know, and I said you basically switched to the par instead of bar, but you had to do it through a limbo system instead because your brain wouldn't just go switch to golf.
No, because I wanted to make my joke about him touching the bar. There was a solid through line.
I mean, it was a terrible joke if that was your through line.
Golf is points based. Why would I jump to golf?
Because it's only one letter away from bar. Par, that is, not golf. I'm not that drunk.
Your through line is way worse. Your whole thing is that par and bar are one letter apart. It sounds similar.
No, they're one letter apart, and in this context, you went from being above the bar to below the par, so to speak. So it makes perfect sense.
Above the bar and below the bar. There's a bar either way. Is a bar. Oh my god. All right, fine. You know what? Tim's a bogey. All right. If you want to do it in golf terms, Tim's a bogey.
I'll take it.
All right.
It's not good enough. More of a birdie, but whatever.
No. Damien's the birdie.
I don't know any more golf terms.
Dick's the hole in one. I've left albatross off the table though, and eagle for that matter. I know my golf terms.
I don't know enough golf terms to you've gone too far now. This is maybe the one sport you have expertise over me in, clearly.
I play some mini golf video games. I know these terms.
Gotta learn it from somewhere.
That is I knew eagle and birdie anyway, but I will admit albatross when I learned that from playing a video game. I was like, oh, there's something called an albatross. That's when you're 3 under par.
That's new to me.
But obviously in a lot of holes that would be a hole in one because of the par. But if it's a bigger par and there's room for it to be 3 under but not a hole in one, it's a albatross.
Who came up with the let's name it after birds system? I need to shake that man's hand. Because
the ball flies through the air, so
yeah,
you fly with grace.
You fly like an eagle. You fly like an albatross. Who decided an albatross was better than an eagle?
Because no one realised they needed one that was better, and then someone pulled it off one day and went, shit, we have to have a name for that. Well, we've already used eagle.
Probably.
Albatross. They should use the crappy birds, so instead of bogey, it should be like a pigeon.
Just a sparrow.
Or whatever.
See, and this is why the golf comparison is more accurate here. We're going with par rather than a bar. Because after all, he is a bird.
All right, that has been the show. You can. Oh, we have to pick our favorite stuff. Yeah, I forgot we did that.
Yeah, we do that.
Best, worst, best art. Yes. Worst of the week. Well, there was. I mean, for me, it's Wonder Woman, but it's easy for me.
It's actually not that simple for me.
Well, yeah, there's no Emperor Superman or Emperor Joker anymore. So
yeah, I think It's either Batgirl or Flash for me, actually. How bizarre that Batgirl's in the low end. That's that art, I guess. I think I'm going to give it to the Flash overall as the worst, even though it's not terrible, but I felt the exposition you drag in that more than, if I had to reread the 2 issues, I'd take Batgirl.
Okay. Wonder Woman was the worst. So we'll do, before we do best, we'll do best art. So what is the competition here? You're probably talking between Batman,
Wonder Woman. Even though it's your worst issue, I think even you might have an argument in there for art.
No, my next favorite is probably JSA, I think. But I'd say Batman. Batman 407 for me.
Fair enough. I mean, I can't argue with that choice. It's a great choice. I am going to go with Wonder Woman, but I mean, I'm me.
So, best of the week though. What are you picking?
It's JSA, hands down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I rated it the highest. It's obvious what I was going to pick. So, you can, of course, let us know what you think is the best book of the week. You can tell us your favourites in the comments, all that jazz. Do remember, if you're watching the full version of this on YouTube, this is the last episode that will be a full version on YouTube. It's still going to be that on audio. The audio podcast will be the same as it always has been. But for YouTube, it'll be split up into parts, starting with the next episode only on Comics from the Multiverse, the YouTube channel. So please do go check that out if you're on YouTube, and you can get
I believe
parts.
Peter will link to that channel in the description if anyone needs help.
Of course I will. I already did that last week as well, because I mentioned it last week. I'm not a fool.
I'm just making sure, and if you hadn't done it, I was making sure you had some extra work to do.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you can go do that. But of course, all the usual things, like, subscribe, get us on the Twitters at DC Comics Podcast. You can, of course, support us for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You get bonuses, $5 tier especially. You get early access to all of the full episodes anyway of all the Multiverse shows. That won't be quite true with the individual parts. Once they'll start going up once it's went public, basically, on the YouTube. And you can, of course, vote whenever we have a vote, much like Shazam New Beginning was, much like coming soon Justice League Power Rangers is. You can vote whenever we do have one of those up and help decide some of the smaller books that we'll cover in those last 2 slots. But yeah. Otherwise, thank you to Patreon producers. The $20 up and up patrons get their credits, as it were. So thank you to David Short, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Tyler Hess. But I think that's us. I think that's everything I have to tell you. Other than just check out Comics from the Multiverse, the YouTube channel again, because it's new, and go and support it. Check out the main show, of course, if you haven't. I feel like most people find that first and then sort of check out this as the secondary thing, because that's kind of how it was designed. But in case you for some reason did find this first, go check out Comics from the Multiverse and see if you're interested. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading comics, guys. And do you know, I'll rather than doing some sort of catchy one-liner here, I'm going to give an observation now that pop culture has kind of ruined. Is any moment someone says "say my name," much like the Wizard did in Shazam, I can't read that and not in my head go "say my name, say my name."